It's September 14th, 2020, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them up. Number 1, Trump thinks American war dead are losers and suckers. Obviously. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Facepalm 5. Let's go ahead and get started right away with number 1 here. So remember in 2018 when President Trump abruptly canceled a visit to a cemetery in France that is the final resting place of thousands of American war dead? Well, the visit was intended to be part of commemorations of the centennial of the end of the First World War. At the time, Trump followed the advice of Milli Vanilli and blamed it on the rain, claiming his helicopter couldn't fly due to inclement weather and that the Secret Service said it was too dangerous to drive. Now, everybody knew that wasn't true at the time, but an article by Jeffrey Goldberg published in The Atlantic week before last reveals what the real reason behind that cancellation seems to have been. Trump was worried that the rain would mess up his hair, and he didn't consider paying his respects to fallen American soldiers on the anniversary of the end of one of history's most tragic and destructive conflicts to be important enough to risk it. According to the article, Trump complained to members of his staff, quote, "Why should I go to the cemetery? It's filled with losers." On other occasions during the same trip, he shared his opinion that the 1,800 American Marines who died at the Battle of Belleau Wood were, quote, suckers. He also asked his aides who the, quote, good guys were in World War I, and said he didn't understand why the U.S. sided with the Allies. But that's not all. Goldberg's article goes on to say that since becoming president, Trump has also referred to former president and World War II veteran, the late George H.W. Bush, as a loser for getting shot down during World War II. And during a visit to Arlington Cemetery on Memorial Day 2017, Trump and John Kelly, who was then Homeland Security Secretary and was soon to become Trump's chief of staff, stood at the grave of Kelly's son, Robert, who had been killed in Afghanistan. And Trump said to Kelly, the father of the dead soldier at whose grave they were standing, quote, "I don't get it. What was in it for them?" But I'm still not done. Goldberg closes his article with one final brief anecdote. Remember that military parade that Trump was obsessed with staging in Washington, D.C.? He wanted to have tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue, fighter jets flying overhead, the whole bit. But one thing he specifically told his staff not to include was wounded veterans. He thought the sight of amputees who lost limbs while serving in the armed forces of this country would ick the spectators out. He said, nobody wants to see that. Now, what's that, you ask? Why haven't there been thunderous, ceaseless, universal demands for Trump to resign following these revelations? After all, if there's one thing we Americans love too much, but that's not where I'm going right now, it's our military. And the Republican Party in particular seems to regard honoring the American military as its exclusive proprietary duty. So you'd think they would be screaming for Trump's head over this, right? Oh, you sweet summer child. If you think so, you're forgetting a few things. First of all, as the last 4 years have shown us over and over and over again, Republicans don't have principles. They have professed principles. They don't actually give a shit about respecting the military or the people who serve in it. They care about performing respect for the military so they can sucker people who actually do care about the military, or at least think they're supposed to, into voting for them. Second, remember the favorite counter-argument of Trump supporters whenever he does anything awful, which is shaking their heads and saying, no, he didn't. And since the sources of Goldberg's article chose to remain anonymous, most Trumpers have no problem just dismissing the article out of hand and refusing to engage with it at all. Of course, to people capable of not using motivated reasoning, it's not that simple. Goldberg's reporting has been confirmed by multiple outlets, including the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Associated Press, and Fox News. Yes, Fox News confirmed the veracity of the Jeffrey Goldberg article in The Atlantic. And the defenses and denials from Trump and his people haven't exactly had the ring of truth. For instance, Trump's former press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, has insisted he never, ever said anything like what Goldberg reports in The Atlantic. And she's gone on to say that she knows Trump cares about the troops because she has been with Trump when he's called parents of soldiers to inform them that their child has been killed. And she says, quote, "That's a call no president wants to make." Funny thing about that, it's a call no president has to make, because presidents don't inform families of military deaths. Ever. Sarah Sanders is lying. And also apparently has not seen The Messenger with Woody Harrelson and Ben Foster, which is a shame because that is a really, really good movie. Anyway, Donald Trump doesn't support the troops, but that doesn't mean that you can't. And I'm talking here specifically about supporting the troops, not supporting the military as an institution, not supporting wars, not uncritically cheering on everything the armed forces do. I'm not in favor of any of that. But many American veterans, especially those who served in the post-9/11 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, face serious challenges, including homelessness. Now, there are links in the video description to two organizations. There's the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans, which provides emergency support for homeless vets. And there's also an organization called Homes for Our Troops, which specializes in providing specially adapted homes for seriously injured vets of the post-9/11 wars. They're both excellent organizations. If you, unlike the President of the United States, want to actually do something to help out veterans in need, and you're able, of course, send them some money. They're good organizations and it's a good cause. But here's the bottom line about Goldberg's article. It's based on multiple sources from within the administration. It's been confirmed by other reporters. And honestly, what in it is remotely inconsistent with the person we know Trump to be from his public actions and statements? How clueless or dishonest or both do you have to be to argue that Donald Trump would never, ever say things like he's reported to have said in that Atlantic article? Of course he would say things like that about dead soldiers, about wounded soldiers, and he did say them. How can anyone seriously doubt that? He said those things he's reported to have said in the Atlantic, just like he said what he said about John McCain, which he has lately tried to deny, despite having said those things in public on TV. He said them because he has no capacity to understand service or sacrifice, because he never thinks of others or of the greater good, only of himself, because he's incapable of seeing the world as anything other than a series of zero-sum transactions. He said those things. He thinks those things. In other words, because he's a miserable piece of shit. And on a related note, he's also probably a rapist several times over, which brings me to number 2. Attorney General Bill Barr doubles down on acting as Trump's personal lawyer. So, E. Jean Carroll, who is the former Elle magazine columnist who has accused Donald Trump of raping her in 1996, is currently suing Trump for defamation. Last week, the Justice Department, led by Attorney General Bill Barr, announced that it was intervening to defend Trump in the lawsuit. That, in and of itself, isn't that unusual. The Justice Department typically defends the president in lawsuits if the president is sued while they're in office. But that's if the suit is over something that the president did in an official capacity. Now, Carol is suing Trump for defamation over remarks he made when he denied her rape accusation. And those remarks were made while Trump was president. But it seems like a bit of a stretch to argue that they were made in his official capacity as president. And yet, of course, that's exactly the argument Barr's Justice Department is making, that Trump's denial of Carol's rape accusation was made in his official capacity as president, and therefore it's appropriate for the Justice Department to defend him. There are some pretty significant upsides to this for Trump, naturally, or why else would this be happening? For instance, if the Justice Department is able to win a change of venue from state to federal court, and if their argument that Trump was acting in an official capacity when he denied Carol's accusations is accepted, that could lead to the case being dismissed, since courts typically don't allow federal employees to be sued for defamation over things they did as a part of their official duties. But even if that doesn't happen, getting the suit moved to federal court could help Trump, because if Carol wins the case, and Trump loses, and Carol is awarded a monetary settlement, because Trump was being defended by the United States government, whatever money that Carol is awarded would have to be paid to her by the United States government, the taxpayer-funded United States government. Trump is trying to put the American people on the hook for his defamation suit. Getting the public to foot the bill when you get sued for defaming someone you allegedly raped might sound like some straight up Banana Republic shit, but then again, is that really so surprising? We've been sliding in that direction for a while now, an observation that was just confirmed with the release of a new report last week. Number 3, new social progress index shows things in the U.S. are getting objectively worse. The 2020 edition of the Social Progress Index, which measures the well-being and quality of life of the nations of the world, was released last week, which is good news for all of you statistics nerds and for people like me who are morbidly preoccupied with bearing witness to the rapidly accelerating disintegration of my society. And guess what? The good old US of A is slipping. I know, right? You can hardly even tell. When the index was introduced in 2011, the U.S. was ranked at number 19 relative to the other countries in the index. And that's not too shabby, considering that there are 163 countries in total on the list. But now, in 2020, the U.S. is at number 28. Still not terrible. Now, it's not number 1, but that doesn't make a difference because we're Americans and we'll just keep saying we're number 1, even if we objectively, definitely are not. But the ranking by itself isn't the whole story, because it turns out the U.S. is one of only 3 countries ranked by the index, and the other 2 are Brazil and Hungary, that has a lower overall score now than when the index was introduced almost a decade ago. In other words, things are getting better, generally speaking, all over the world. Quality of life is improving, societies are becoming healthier, and this has been happening everywhere over the last 9 years, except for Brazil and Hungary and the United States. The Social Progress Index bases its overall scores on 50 separate factors, and judged by some of those factors, the U.S. is number 1. For instance, advancement of medical technology. Judged by other factors, we're far from number 1. We rank 97th in the world when it comes to people having access to quality health care. Kind of makes you wonder what all the advanced medical equipment is for, huh? Or, who? Anyway, we're number 28. Woohoo! Maybe next year we'll drop out of the top 30. Huh? You think we can do it? I think we can do it. Number 4, new Oscar diversity standards piss off actors who aren't being cast that much anyway. So last week, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the organization that holds the Oscars, the most prestigious award show in the American movie industry, announced new diversity requirements for Best Picture nominees that are set to take effect in the year 2024. The thing is, and I know this will shock you, so I apologize in advance, not everybody is happy about it. In fact, some of Hollywood's biggest stars are crying foul. I'm talking about icons like Kirstie Alley. Remember her? Kirstie Alley, she was Lieutenant Saavik in Star Trek II, and then she was on Cheers, and then she did those Talking Baby movies with John Travolta in the 90s, right before she fell into a time warp, I guess, because I'll be damned if I can think of a damn thing she's done since. Anyway, noted film star and perennial Oscar contender Kirstie Alley was really pissed off at the new diversity rules. She tweeted that the new rules were anti-artist and dictatorial. Seems like quite a backlash if a top-billed box office superstar like Kirstie Alley is speaking out. But she's not the only one. James Woods, star of such classics as Diggstown and The Getaway, not the Peck and Paul one with Steve McQueen, the shitty one with Alec Baldwin, and North Fork. No, never mind that one. North Fork is actually a really, really good movie. And James Woods is a really good actor who's done some terrific work in his career. He's just also a massive asshole personally. Anyway, he tweeted that the new diversity rules were, quote, madness. Okay, James, I'm looking forward to hearing your voice in whatever cheap-ass off-brand animated movie you've got coming up next. And finally, there's also Dean Cain, the actor who was somehow able to play Superman on TV for 4 years, despite obviously not paying attention, also chimed in asking, quote, how about we judge on this criteria? Which film was the best picture? Also, when do we start handing out participation Oscars? Ooh, sick burn, Dean. But, of course, the star of Airplane vs. Volcano and The Dog Who Saved Christmas is overlooking a couple of things. First of all, they already hand out participation Oscars, only they're called honorary Oscars, and they're awarded outside the standard competitive categories to people the Academy deems deserving and have been since the very first Oscar ceremony in 1929. And in fact, honorary Oscars are awarded so frequently that the last time the Academy Awards held a ceremony where nobody got an honorary Oscar was 2008. So they give out participation Oscars all the time. Second of all, the Oscars have had detailed eligibility requirements for Best Picture and its other categories since long before this. For instance, movies must be over 40 minutes long, except for those considered in the short film categories, of course, must have had their initial public exhibition in the form of a theatrical release, not a video release or a streaming release, must complete a qualifying theatrical run of at least 7 consecutive days in the same theater with at least 3 showings a day, and must be shown for paid admission in a theater in Los Angeles County. Now, some of those requirements have been waived this year because of the COVID pandemic, but you get the idea. Best Picture has never been about just deciding what the best film was, what film was the best picture of the year. And even if it was, that's a subjective question that people can answer however they want. And if some people consider the diversity of the people involved in the production of the film to be a relevant factor in judging the film's quality, who's to tell them they're wrong? Other than the guy who played Brenda's boyfriend for like 5 minutes on Beverly Hills 90210, I mean. Also, these new diversity standards, while I think they're a very positive step in the right direction, aren't going to be too challenging to satisfy. To qualify for Best Picture, a film has to meet at least 2 of the 4 new requirements, and there are multiple ways to meet 3 of those 4 criteria. And even if a film doesn't meet the criteria, it's not like it's illegal to make it or show it in a theater. Films that don't meet the new diversity criteria can even still be submitted for Oscars, just not for Best Picture. So really, it's not that big of a deal. And maybe someone should tell these Trump-loving, boot-licking has-beens to just calm the fuck down. Veronica's Closet. That's something else Kirstie Alley did after the Look Who's Talking franchise crashed and burned. Veronica's Closet. I never watched it. And now it's time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. So he encouraged his supporters who are planning to vote by mail to go to the polls on election day to check and see if their mail ballot has been counted, and if not, to vote in person, which would be illegal because once you send in your mail ballot, you voted, and voting at the polling place after that would be voting twice, which is illegal. It's the sort of thing Trump is trying to scare people into thinking Democrats are going to do, only Trump just publicly told his supporters to do it. Hey, fellow Americans, let me speak to you American to American, if you'll permit me. And speaking of voting, do it. Vote. Vote by mail if you can. Vote in person if you can do it safely, but please do it. And if you want to do more, and you can do more, again, safely, please do more. Volunteer to be a poll worker at your local polling place, or better yet, help people make it out to vote. Help your friends and family make plans for how they're going to vote. Make sure they request their mail-in ballots and send them in as early as possible. Offer rides to polling places if you're able, and again, if you can do that safely. Trump isn't constantly shouting about the election being rigged and telling his supporters to try and vote twice because he's not worried about losing, but he's only gonna lose if we vote him out. So let's get out the vote. That's something we can do. And start thinking about what you're going to do now, because the election is less than 2 months away, 50 days away starting today. So let's just do something about this, please. Can somebody just take a lamp or a bottle or a whole bunch of votes and end this, please? Anyway, moving on. He issued a memo to the White House Office of Management and Budget directing it to restrict federal funding to quote-unquote anarchist jurisdictions, which in this case means cities with governments led by Democrats, especially those which have moved to defund their police departments following widespread protests against police brutality. The memo reads, "It is imperative that the federal government review the use of federal funds by jurisdictions that permit anarchy, violence, and destruction in America's cities." He's talking about property damage. That's what this is about. He's not threatening to cut off federal funding to these cities because cops on their police forces have murdered people and gotten away with it. That's not the kind of violence and destruction he's talking about. He means broken windows and setting fires and vandalism, which the overwhelming majority of the protesters are not doing and have not done. But that's what he's upset about. Not citizens being killed by people who are supposed to be protecting them and keeping the peace. Also, how is giving less support to cities that are supposedly being overrun by violent anarchists supposed to help anything? Right, I forgot. It's not about helping anyone. It's about Trump hurting the people his supporters want him to hurt. His campaign released a new ad attempting to paint Joe Biden as a pawn of violent protesters, which ended with a shot of Biden kneeling in Bethel AME Church in Wilmington, Delaware, with a group of black leaders standing behind him. That's the way they indicate that Biden is on the side of the protesters, by showing a video clip of him kneeling with some black folks in a church. The pastor of that church, of Bethel AME, has demanded an apology for what he has correctly called a racist attack on the African-American church, and I'm sure that apology will be forthcoming any minute now. Also, intercut in the video with, super scary violent protest footage of mostly people not really doing anything all that violent anyway, are shots of Nancy Pelosi and other leading congressional Democrats kneeling in the Capitol during a ceremony to honor George Floyd. Just, so it's clear what we're supposed to be afraid of here. He held a rally in Nevada in violation of state COVID-19 guidelines that prohibit gatherings of more than 50 people because, as the law and order candidate, rules do not apply to Trump. He insulted Joe Biden and claimed he wants to ban energy, whatever the hell that even means. Biden wants to ban energy. He said for like the millionth time that Hillary Clinton should be in jail. That election was 4 years ago, y'all. He called the upcoming election, which has not happened yet, rigged, repeated his delusional lie that the pre-COVID economy was, quote, the greatest in the history of the world, casually dropped the number of Americans who have died due to COVID, then bragged, quote, we've done an incredible job, and predicted that if Biden wins the election, there will be, quote, countless deaths from suicide. Could make a really mean joke here. Not going to do it. Just going to mention that I could, so you can think of it yourselves. And excerpts of interviews between Trump and Bob Woodward that were conducted for Woodward's new book were published, revealing that Trump knew all along how deadly the COVID pandemic was, but intentionally tried to mislead the public into thinking it wasn't as bad as it was. And since the story broke, Trump has defended himself by insisting that, hey, he just didn't want to cause a panic. Which is bullshit, because all he ever does is try to incite panic in his supporters. Panic about immigrants, panic about protesters, panic about black people moving to the suburbs, panic about moderate establishment Democrat Joe Biden transforming the United States into a Soviet dictatorship. But also, it's possible to tell people the truth, even the truth about an urgent, dangerous situation, without panicking them. In fact, it's not only possible, it's what you should do. People deserve to know the truth about their situation. If you're an airline pilot and your plane is about to crash, you don't get on the intercom and tell the passengers nothing is wrong. You tell them the plane is going down, but that if they remember the safety procedures they were told about before and they stay calm and they help each other, things are going to be okay. And granted, the metaphor I chose was a plane crash, and safety procedures might not save you during one of those, but they sure as hell would have saved a lot more people during this pandemic if only the person in charge was interested and capable of being a leader instead of a demagogue. Now, this is usually the part where I wrap up the official sort of, part of the show and go on to the after show. But first, before we wrap up the official part of the show, I'm going to do something a little different here, because this is the Facepalm 5, and the news is therefore always bad because you don't facepalm over good news. So I thought it would be nice from now on, starting with this episode and every episode moving forward until I finally give up doing this because I just can't fucking take it anymore. I thought it would be nice to end on a slightly more optimistic note. So we're done with the 5, but here's one last thing, which I'm calling your feel-good fix. Here's your feel-good fix this time, everybody. In Charlottesville, Virginia, over the weekend, workers removed a Confederate statue that stood near the site of the 2017 white supremacist rally called Unite the Right. The statue removed was not the Robert E. Lee statue that was the rallying point for the neo-Nazis who attended the rally. The city council ordered the removal of that statue as well, but that's been tied up in court. The statue removed was a monument to Confederate soldiers, and it had stood outside the county courthouse in Charlottesville for over 100 years. And it stands there no longer. So there's still a lot of work to do, but it's a start. Anyway, that's your feel-good fix, and that's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, look after each other. Stay tuned for the after show, everybody. Okay, hi everybody, we're back. Welcome to the post show where I'm just going to hang out with everybody in the live chat for a little while and see what everybody wants to talk about. And yeah. Oh, and I see before I get too far into anything, I just want to acknowledge I just got a super chat from my buddy John Burns. Thank you very much, John, for your generosity. It says the Oscars rules for Best Picture only don't go far enough. The small independent movie makers and not the big studios who can easily hire diverse people who won't be on screen then spend millions on Tom Hanks. Yay, corporate diversity. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the new guidelines are a good starting point. But yeah, I agree that they don't go far enough. So I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you as far as that goes. Now, before I get too much further, I want to acknowledge my new $5 or more per month Patreon patrons who have joined my Patreon campaign since the last time I acknowledged, since the last Facepalm 5, actually. So here we go. And their names are, let me get over here so you can see me. Their names are Hi, thank you, Hi. Ryan Van Schack, thank you, Ryan. Philip Sink, thank you, Philip. Dan Allen, thank you, Dan. Chris Woodall, thank you, Chris. Tass D. Amore, thank you, Tass. The Crystal Show, thank you, Crystal Show. Gene Mithun, thank you, Gene. Randy Thompson, thank you, Randy. Lakar Fett, thank you, Lakar. Seth Jones, thank you, Seth. Matt Weir, thank you, Matt. Brian A., thank you, Brian. And Lisbeth Dylis. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks to all of my patrons, especially the new patrons whose names that I just read out. But thanks to everybody who has been a patron, no matter how long you've been a patron, no matter what amount you are pledging or have been pledging. And I appreciate your support. I could not do this without you. And just a reminder before we get too much further into things, that if you want to support this channel and support my YouTube work, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives. For $5 a month or more, you get a shout out, but pledges of any amount from $1 a month on up really help me out tremendously and get you access to the patron only feed on my Patreon page, where you can see you can vote in polls to determine future Trek Actually topics. You can submit questions early for Ask Away live streams. There's all kinds of little things you can do if you become a patron at pretty much any level from $1 on up. And also, Patreon just introduced the feature a couple weeks ago that you can pay your entire year's worth of pledges all at once in a single lump sum if you want. So you can still pledge $5 a month, but instead of paying it $5 every month, you pay it all at once. And when you do that, you get a little bit of a discount. So you can do that, or you can keep pledging at $5 a month per month, whatever you want to do. I appreciate the support tremendously. And now let's turn to the live chat and see what everybody's talking about. I got a couple more super chats here. First, there's one from Danny C with a cute little sticker. Thank you very much, Danny. Then another one from John Burns, who says, from the UK Independent website, Trump wants Joe Rogan to moderate a presidential debate. President says he supports having a 4-hour debate with no live audience. I feel like this is, and I saw this earlier. I saw people tweeting about this earlier. Is there another? I mean, this isn't. It's not the worst example of the continuing and accelerating decline of American democracy, but it's one of the more recent examples of things in this country are just not quite right, are they? They're just not where they're supposed to be, really. If the president of the United States is saying, I think we should have a 4-hour debate for the presidential election on the Joe Rogan podcast. It's not working right, is it? We're not doing it right. We're doing something wrong. If that's something that is seriously happening. If the president of the United States is saying, I know what we should do. We should go on Joe Rogan for 4 hours for one of the debates. Jesus Christ. Just got a super chat from Robert F. Jobin Jr. Thank you very much for your generosity. And it says, have you heard of Beau of the Fifth Column? If so, what are your thoughts? Heard of, not familiar with at all. So I cannot give you my thoughts. Not familiar with Beau of the Fifth Column, other than having heard the name. So sorry. Sorry that I can't give a better answer to your question because I'm ignorant. M.A. Melby, Joe Rogan, I'm not a fan, but doesn't he hate Trump? I don't know if he hates him, but he did say, he said some, I don't know, anti-Trump, but I don't think he hates him, but I don't think he's necessarily, he's one of these libertarian dipshits who thinks he's sort of like smarter than the room because he doesn't want to commit to either side. But I think he has said things that haven't been super pro-Trump. CMOX says America has jumped the shark. Oh man, you ain't kidding. But when, right? But when? Like it's been a while. Actually, I mean, from the perspective of black folks, we jumped the shark before we even existed. Like we jumped the shark when the Constitution was ratified and slavery was still in there. We jumped the shark right there. They were like, wait a minute, no. Like we didn't even get off the ground. The shark jump was the first official act of the United States. Lots of love for Bo of the Fifth Column in the live chat. I'll have to try to check him out. Secular Scholar says, hi, Steve, I'm an atheist, and I know you're an atheist, but you get the feeling that 2020 is some god's way of saying vote Trump out? Maybe. I don't know. If there is a God, he sure doesn't like us. Like 2020 seems to be the year that if there is a God, 2020 is the year that God is just like, oh, I'm sick of this New Testament shit. Fuck it. No, I'm going back to the Old Testament shit. We're not doing this anymore. You know? Yeah, that's what I think. Vlog MN says, this may be a Ship of Theseus debate, but when they turned the Enterprise into the Enterprise A, was it still the same Enterprise? How much of it was the same ship? It was a completely different ship. To me, there is no Ship of Theseus issue when it comes to the Enterprise A, because the Enterprise A is a completely different ship that was just named the Enterprise. So it has no connection to the previous, because the previous Enterprise was destroyed in Star Trek 3 when it blows up with the self-destruct and then burns up in the atmosphere. Like that Enterprise, the one that I made the video about where we talked about the Ship of Theseus problem, that Enterprise was completely destroyed. The Enterprise A is a totally new ship that was rechristened the Enterprise A. So no Ship of Theseus problem there. Although I'm pretty sure it was the same model. Like because it's identical. Like the ships are identical. So I'm pretty sure they used the same model for both Enterprises. They just painted Enterprise A on the model instead of Enterprise. So, you know, in that way, it's the same ship. And from a real world perspective, it's the same ship because it was represented by the same model. But no, within the fiction of the films, completely different ship. Caroline Clark, I did get your Patreon, and for some reason I guess I didn't see it on my list. Because yes, I don't know. I'm not sure why. I didn't add it to my list. I apologize. I'll have to go back and look at that. Yeah, but I apologize for not mentioning you there, Caroline, because I remember getting your, I don't know why that is. Mr. Camerite, hey Steve, did you hear that reportedly Bin Laden's niece, along with being a known Q supporter, has now given Trump her support? I had not heard that. I guess it doesn't, I mean, it's kind of a fucked up family, isn't it? Like, I had not heard that. Another super chat from John Burns, who says, because corporate media is better than independent media, I'd love to see Neil deGrasse Tyson host a debate. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I would like to see on the one hand, I would like to say, I would love to see a debate focused on science, like focused on scientific issues, scientific literacy. But honestly, I mean, I think Biden could probably be trained up pretty good in that and would at least be able to not totally embarrass himself. But like, what's the point of debating Trump about science? Like, seriously, what's the point of debating Trump about science? It's like trying to debate a dead fish about science. Like you're not going to get anything. Like there's nothing. Homebody says, I think another FU J.K. Rowling may be in order, Steve. Sigh, I can't seem to link it, but she's apparently coming out with a new transphobic novel. It's in Vanity Fair. Yeah, I saw people tweeting about that. I'll give you another fuck you, J.K. Rowling. Like, yeah, the premise of the novel sounds just grotesquely, offensively transphobic. Just absolutely horrific. Yeah. Douglas, have I voted yet? No, I have not. I have requested my mail-in ballot, but I don't believe Maryland has sent them out yet. I haven't gotten my, but I am going to be voting by mail again, like I did in the primary, and I'll be voting by mail in the general election as well. As soon as my ballot gets here, I'm gonna fill it out and send it back in. Absolutely. Oh, another super chat from John Burns. Says, thank you again. It says, I hope the no audience is because of COVID-19. I mean, yeah, I mean, it should be, but it's you know, I don't know. I mean, technically, see, here's the thing. Here. I kind of think that all debates should not have audiences, should not have live audiences. Like, I just, what's the audience there for? I mean, it's not, I mean, it is, you can't escape the fact that a political debate is a form of theater, but we're not supposed to, like, you know, put that right out front, are we? You know, we're not supposed to lean into the fact that it's theater, right? It's supposed to be this really important event in our civic life where the candidates for the office are answering questions and talking to each other and arguing and debating and letting the people see, you know, how they think on their feet and what their positions are and how they answer each other's challenges. Like, that's, you know, that's supposed to be the point, not the theatrical stuff. So, like, I don't think a live audience should be there at all, period, whether there's a pandemic or not. But this time, because of the pandemic, I think that's probably the justification for it. Sure. Yeah, another super chat from Robert Jobin. Thank you again. Says JK, fitting initials for someone who's a joke. Boom. Darylette says, hey, I just noticed that Steve is wearing a different cap. Yes, I am. I had to. I didn't have to, but I decided it was time to replace my my son's cap, my Hagerstown Suns cap. And much to my disappointment, I found it pretty much impossible to find a new black Hagerstown Suns cap in my hat size. So I went back to the drawing board and I made this hat. This hat is it's just a plain black fitted cap, and then the patch is a patch that I ordered separately and attached to it, and it is the original logo for NASA. Before they switched to the current logo, they've had the current logo for like 50 years, but you know, the what's called the meatball logo with the red swoosh in the middle. Before that, they had this logo, where there's still a red swoosh, but it's just a lot thinner and it's kind of going around the sun there. And that is the original logo of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And I'm a big space nerd and I love NASA, so I thought that would be cool. So I got the patch and I sewed it onto a hat, and that's my new hat. So thank you for noticing, finally. I've had it for like a month. Oh, here's a super chat from another super chat from John Burns. Says, does it matter to her what the topic of the book is? What matters to her and the publisher is sales. If JK's sales flop, then she might, quote unquote, change. Possibly. Yeah, possibly. I think absolutely. And another super chat from Twilord. Thank you very much. It says, sorry for missing a lot of your show. Oh, that's okay. Was reading up on the UK being about to break international law from colonial, it's only Ireland attitudes. Oh, that sounds great. That sounds just great. Another one from John Burns, super chat, says, what if Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow co-hosted, like, the debate? Jesus, no, Hannity is a clown. Ideally, you should get journalists to host the debates. Hannity's not a journalist. Hannity's barely a talking head. No, of course. I'm sure Trump would love that, because Hannity's questions to Trump would be, you know, just an hour and a half of, tell us why you're so great, Mr. President. Like, Trump would love that. CMOC says, what are your thoughts around the Democrats starting to push for in-person voting if you can, because of the concern around Trump saying stop counting on election night? Well, I mean, I understand them saying that, but I mean, the truth, like, Trump doesn't have the authority to tell them to stop counting on election night. Like, the president doesn't get to decide when the votes are stopped, when the vote count is stopped. Like, that's not the president's purview. The president doesn't have that authority. So Trump can whine and piss and moan about it all he wants, but it's not up to him. It's up to the states that actually hold the election. It's up to the state board of elections to decide when they will count ballots until and when the election will be certified, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's completely out of the president's hands. So in that sense, it doesn't matter. But I understand the Democrats maybe being a little nervous about Trump trying to tamper with the election and maybe saying like, okay, an in-person vote is probably the most reliable vote. And it would be ideally like the best case scenario is that Trump loses resoundingly and we know on election night. And that may not happen. So I understand why the Democrats are saying that. They're trying to push for the surest result that they can. But I mean, that the safety issue is a big one for me. Like I would not want to send people out to stand in lines and go into crowded polling places to vote and have that be an event that spreads the coronavirus even more than it already is. Like so I'm reticent about it for that reason. But I understand, practically speaking, why they may be doing it. Here's a super chat from John Gingras. Thank you very much, John. Says, Hannity would be saying, let me tell you why you're so great, Mr. President. He knows Trump can't be counted on to form his own thoughts. That's true. Yes, that's true. And then another super chat from Robert Jobin who says, can we get UN vote observers? God, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. Dana, wait, the president doesn't just get to do anything he wants? I mean, Trump hasn't figured that out yet, but yeah, that's the idea. Regarding vote counts, but him jitting up the people. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole deal about, him saying, oh, the election is rigged, or the only way we're going to lose is if it's rigged, or the only reason we're behind in the polls is because they're fake polls. Like that does have an effect. Like the president may not have the legal authority to do anything about the election, but that bully pulpit that the president has is a big, big weapon. And the fact that he is using it so shamelessly to undermine confidence in the electoral process on the basis of nothing, on the basis of absolutely nothing, is really, really worrying. Is really, really worrying for sure. Mr. Cameron says, have you heard that a politician overseas had nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize? Just what we need. Trump soiling the rep of another award. Didn't that already happen? I mean, I know it happened. It just happened, but didn't it happen a couple years ago too? Somebody nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And then I think Trump even said, oh, I would win it if it was an honest vote. Because again, that's anytime he's not popular, it's because it's rigged. Anytime he loses anything, it's because it wasn't a fair match, right? So he actually said, oh, I probably would win the Nobel Peace Prize if it was an honest vote. Okay. Sure. Some random geek says, just want to say that I love your fanfic from Friday. Lois Lane was great. I loved her Waterboy line. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And like I said during that live stream, I am going to reading fanfic is going to be more of a regular thing on the channel because I'm writing a lot more of it than I used to, and I really enjoy reading it. So yeah, but thank you. I'm glad that you enjoy it. Vlog MN says, didn't you from the future give you a hat? Did the you from the future give you this hat? No, and the hat that me from the future gave me, I tend to wear that only for Trek Actually videos. So this is sort of like my normal everyday hat now. And my Star Trek hat is the Niners hat that future me gave me in that time travel episode of Trek Actually. Super chat from John Burns who says, wait, when did Trump start acting in the way he is currently? Like 2015, 1980? I'm thinking like when he was born. Like Trump has always been Trump. I mean, if you look back throughout, I mean, because he's been a media figure for the last 40 years, more than the last 40, since the 70s, so almost 50 years. He's been a known celebrity in the United States and eventually throughout the world for a very long time. And he's always been like this. He's always been an ignorant, clownish, bigoted asshole. Like, that's just who he is. Some random geek says also Hitler and Mussolini nominated for Nobel Peace Prizes too. Yes, absolutely. It's not being nominated isn't necessarily such an honor, is it? When you think about other people who've been nominated. Secular Scholar says, hey Steve, what somebody has yet to ask since you said you would watch it. Have you watched Legion yet? No, I have not. I have not watched Legion, but I did plug another hole in my watch history. And I look, I don't make a big deal about this because it's not something that that I'm proud of or that I think needs to be bragged about. But up until recently, I had actually not seen every single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. And over the past couple of months, I have caught up on all of them except for one. The only one that I had not seen of all the MCU movies was Thor: The Dark World. And I finally watched Thor: The Dark World on Disney Plus a couple of days ago. And actually, I think it was just yesterday. It was yesterday that I watched. Boy, time flies, doesn't it? I watched it yesterday. And I'm okay with waiting so long to watch it. I mean, it was good. Like, it was good. It was fine. It wasn't like, Civil War or Winter Soldier or Black Panther or Guardians of the Galaxy or Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Oh, man, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 might be my favorite. Jesus Christ, I love that one. But it was good. Like, it was really good. It was really good. So I caught up on that, but I haven't watched Legion yet. M.A. Melby says Trump equals Biff from Back to the Future. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Oh, Chris H., did you catch the news that monophosphane was discovered in the atmosphere of Venus, which is considered a prime biomarker, possibly indicating life on Earth? Yes, I did. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, I mean, if I had written my notes for Facepalm 5 later, like after I noticed that, or after I saw that news trending, that might have been the feel good fix this time instead of the Confederate statue being taken down in Charlottesville. Because as I said, explaining the hat, I'm a huge space nerd, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that there's life on Venus. Like, some people are kind of overstating that, but it is a compound that we might expect to find if life was present, and that's really, really cool. I mean, that's really, really cool. Radical Bacon says, I found the Hagerstown Suns hat online, but they only have the smallest size. So Steve has a big head. Uh-huh. Yep. Dana knows. Dana says, this is news? No, it is not. Not to anybody who knows me, really. Especially not to people who know me really well. Caroline Clark says, I'm afraid that if Lord Dampnut wins this time, we're going to have only Trumps in office for the remainder of time. Oh, that cheers me up. Thanks, Caroline. Always look on the bright side of life. Seth Jones, do you feel naked without your hats? No, not really. I mean, I'm fine not having the hat. I mean, I do wear a hat pretty much all day. Like when I get out of bed, when I get dressed, and part of getting dressed is putting the hat on. But I mean, I don't feel, I would feel if I didn't wear it, if I went out, like somewhere and I didn't have it on, I would feel kind of weird. And the times that I have had to go places without the hat on, like it's like, oh, I'd rather have my hat on, but it's not like, it's not debilitating or anything. It's just a preference. Sarah Schildknecht says, what do you think of Trump's niece? The one who wrote the book, right? Mary Trump. I think she's really impressive, actually. And the way she describes him and what she says about Trump and about the way their family works. I mean, it certainly matches what we've seen from them in public, doesn't it? I mean, I tend to put a lot of stock in what she says. Dana asks, would you ever play a Trek tabletop RPG? And if so, which discipline would your character focus on? No. That's pretty much a hard no. I would never. As you know, I'm just not into RPGs at all. It's just not my thing. Even Star Trek, it just doesn't interest me at all. But if I did, which discipline would I focus on? Command. Because I want to be in charge. Peg Pedro Noguera says, I was just wondering if we are really going to get a Steve Shives special on Peter Cushing and Hammer Horror, and when. I'd also like to see a video entirely about Trek tech evolution over the series. Yes, I am going to do that Peter Cushing video. I'm thinking I'm going to do it next month, probably to coincide with Halloween. But yes, I am serious. I'm not just saying that. I really think that's a great idea, and I am definitely going to do a video, hopefully next month, about Peter Cushing's Hammer horror films. Because, I mean, I love Peter Cushing. I love Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. I love Peter Cushing as Baron Frankenstein. I think Peter Cushing in the Hammer films in the 50s and 60s is one of my favorite actors from horror films. I just love him. I love him so much. And I love a lot of those movies. So I'm definitely making that video. Keely Hardy says the chances of anything coming from Venus was 1,000,000 to 1, they said. Well, but I mean, what about the young woman who was from Venus? Yeah, and CMX said, yes, and Mary Trump is an educated psychologist. Exactly. She actually has some basis to, I mean, and she's very, like, you know, she's very clear that she's not diagnosing him, that she's never examined him or anything. But based on her experience, like, she can sort of speculate kind of like about some things that he might be dealing with. Yeah. Pedro says, great news. Thanks a lot. You're the best. Oh, come on. It's going to be a fun video to make. So like, I don't, you know, like, you don't have to thank me. It's going to be a real fun video to make. Caroline Clark, every sperm is sacred. Is the sacred purpose of the sperm that produced Trump to end the world? Christ, I hope not. Sarah Schildneck says, what would you like to see in season 2 of Picard? Character development? More about Romulans or XBs or synths? Oh, and where did you get your TNG Picard doll? Which is right here, by the way. There's my Jean-Luc doll. I got him, I think I got him from eBay. They used to make these. These used to be really popular in the 90s and early 2000s before they discontinued them. But the Playmates 9-inch Star Trek dolls. And yeah, I decided to start collecting them because I started doing those comics, which I haven't done for a while and I need to get back into. Because I have a bunch of those written and I just need to photograph them and actually make the comics. But yeah, I got them on eBay. And that's where I got all of the dolls that I use for those comics. And then what would I like to see in season 2 of Picard? You know, I'd love to see Worf in terms of characters. Like I'd love to see Worf show up. I would love to see Geordi. Beverly would be nice. It'd be nice to see some kind of resolution, if not resolution, at least like a continuation or an acknowledgement of their feelings or relationship or whatever between Jean-Luc and Beverly. That would be nice. And yeah, as far as story, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of over the whole Romulan thing. The Romulan thing didn't really blow my hair back in the first season. I feel like the Borg stuff was really interesting or was potentially interesting, but didn't really have room to breathe. Like it felt like the Borg, like the Borg stuff and the XBs and the Federation kind of rejecting the X-Borg or whatever, like that felt like a big idea that deserved its own season. And there just didn't seem to be enough oxygen for it. It's kind of got, smushed. So yeah, but, yeah, I mean, it would be, I don't know. I'm not sure about what I would want to see in terms of story. Vlog MN, Will Riker or Tom Riker? Are you asking in terms of like, who do I prefer or who would I rather see on Picard? I'd like to see either one of them. It would be interesting if they could come up with a good Tom Riker story. That would be interesting to revisit that character after all these years. Pedro Noguera says, on one hand, it seems that writers don't get the importance of consistency, but on the other hand, it's all fictional. So any thoughts about that? Consistency is important, but I've made this statement many times before in videos. As a critic, as an audience member, my interest lies first and foremost in the story that is in front of me right now. And I think as a writer, as a creator, your loyalty should lie with the story that is in front of you right now. Now, if you are writing a series, if you're writing a saga, yes, of course, try to be consistent. Try not to contradict yourself. But where we run into issues is when we have these long-running sagas like franchises like Star Trek or Star Wars or comic book titles that have run in some cases for 80 years and had just countless creative teams. When you impose the expectation that it all has to be totally consistent, right? Like internal consistency is important if you're talking about your own work. I totally get that. But if you're talking about like if I get hired to write Superman for DC Comics and I'm expected to write stories that are completely consistent with every other Superman story published by DC in the last 80 years, written by God knows how many people, that's a ridiculous expectation, and I'm going to completely ignore that. And I'm going to write the Superman stories that I think are the best ones that I can write, or the ones that I'm interested in telling. And if in telling those stories, to do them justice or to tell the best stories that I can, I need to ignore something or contradict something or rewrite something or retcon something from the past that I had nothing to do with, I'm going to do it because, yeah, it's all fiction. And who gives a shit? You know? Dana, you're one of a kind. You know that. Radical Bacon has to go to class in 10. Well, it's, I guess I could wrap it up in 10. What do you think? Homebody, I'd like to learn more about 7 of 9. Yeah, 7. I agree. I'd like for 7 to get her own show, to be honest. Yes, and Zeraxis, yes. I believe Whoopi Goldberg is going to be in season 2. I think because Patrick Stewart invited her to come into season 2 on The View. He said, so I mean, I think we're based on that, unless that has completely fallen through. I think we're definitely getting Guinan in season 2, in some capacity. And that's really cool. That's really cool. Seal0626 says Picard as a series was very ADHD. So many ideas, so little follow-up. Yeah, I agree. That has been a problem with Discovery as well. They are not lacking for ideas at all. Like they take, they do with Discovery, they've been doing 13 episodes a year. Actually, the first season was 15, but now it's 13. But they're packing like 26 episodes worth of ideas into 13 episodes, which, is nice. It's really creative, but everything's all kind of smashed together. There's no room. And it really hurts the pacing. Caroline Clark, I'd like to see Ensign Riker on Picard. I would do that if they called me. I'm sure me and Jason would be willing to film a guest spot. This is a good one from Scott Dittman. Joel, Mike, or Jonah? Thank you for including Jonah in that, by the way, because I feel like Jonah gets sort of left out from these discussions. Jonah is a terrific Mystery Science Theater host, and he deserves to be considered equally along with Joel and Mike. If I had to pick, I would pick Mike. I think Mike is my favorite of the 3. But there are reasons to recommend all of them. They're all brilliant in their own way. Super chat from John Burns. Actually, there's a couple super chats that I missed. Michael Lionel Anderson said, "Love your channel." Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate that. And then 2 from John Burns. The first one says, Jeff Wayne's The War of the Worlds, the musical drama. The chances of anyone coming from Mars, calling back to the Venus thing. And then also another one from John who says, "Wow, so many things you could have asked for. Picard's in a dream with Data, so why not Tasha? Or at least Harry Kim. Morning, darling." That's good. That's good. Okay, bye, Radical Bacon. Glad you could make it. Jamie J. Steve here saying that his fanfic is the true canon of DC. Not the true canon, but I mean, but like better? I don't know, maybe better? Well, more consistent because it's just me and one other person making it all up. So it'll be easier to keep things straight. Dr. Strangelove says, "I'd love to see an episode with 7 working with the Doctor again." That would be cool. That would be very cool. Caroline Clark says, "It would be interesting if they could work whatever form Ben Sisko now inhabits into Star Trek Picard. Far-fetched? I don't know if Avery Brooks would do it. He's been kind of out of the public eye for a few years. If they could get Avery Brooks to come back, and reprise Cisco. Obviously, I would love to see Cisco again. Absolutely. Dana says, what story do you have in mind for the next fanfic live stream? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to wait until I write another one or if I'm going to read one that I've already written that I haven't read on a live stream yet. I have to think about that. I'm not sure what the next one I'm going to write is. I know there are ones that we are working on, my writing partner and I, but I don't think any of those will be completely finished anytime like real soon. Hopefully maybe in the next several weeks, but not like real soon. And I don't know what that I'm going to just mostly write personally. I don't know what that is. I haven't thought about it. So yeah, I guess I don't really know. Pedro Nagira says, how awesome would it be to have a question Nightwing fanfic, huh? I would dig that. Really, I'm down for pretty much anything with Nightwing in it. Mr. Camerite says, is your podcast going to be going into Next Gen or TAS? I believe the plan at this point is to jump from original series to Next Gen. I think that is our plan. John Burns, another super chat, says Garrett Wong playing a Q character would be fun. Yeah, I think finding any reason to include Garrett Wong in another Star Trek series would be a good idea because he seems like a really good guy, a really great ambassador for Star Trek, and he's a good actor. He's a really likable, good actor. So I mean, it would be terrific to include him. Pedro says Frankenstein meets Captain Kirk fanfic. That's interesting. And on that note, CL0626, are you writing any Star Trek works? Not at this time. I am focusing on DC Comics stuff. So no Star Trek stuff at this time. And I don't really have any Star Trek ideas at the moment. If I came up with like a really great idea for a Star Trek fanfic, I might write it. But at the moment, no. Dana, Nightwing and Corey. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, you know what? Or maybe just a Nightwing something. If not Nightwing and Corey, then something Nightwing. Because I mean, the two stories I've read so far have both featured Dick Grayson. So maybe I could jump ahead a little bit to after he sort of settled his identity and become Nightwing, left Robin behind and become Nightwing and write a Nightwing story. Maybe Nightwing and Corey. I'll have to think about it. That's a good idea, though. It's a possibility. I mean, that's a story that's gonna get written eventually. I don't know if that's the next one, but it's definitely one that's going to get written eventually for sure. Homebody, or maybe Her Eminence, Kira Nerys. That'd be cool. Yeah, possibly if they go the direction that the DS9 writers room went in What We Left Behind, where Kira is like a Vedic. Super chat from Farallon. We're halfway through Lower Deck Season 1. What do you think? I really like it. I like it a lot so far. I think every episode has made me laugh, has been funny. I think it's a really good example of a Star Trek show that also lampoons Star Trek. Yeah, I've enjoyed Lower Decks so far for sure. CL0626 says Tom Riker and Sito Jaxa escape Cardassian prison together, remembering their better selves in the process, except Sito's dead. And I know it's fiction. I could say, oh, actually, she's alive. They captured her instead of killing her. I like her dead. Like, I think that story needs her to die. That story needs to have that gravity in it. So I would not want to bring Sito back. I think her death is supposed to be sad, and it's supposed to be a gut punch, and that's the point, So I would not change that. Caroline, how about a Carrie Kelly as Robin episode? Carrie as Robin, that would be cool. Or Stephanie Brown as Robin, who never gets her due, who was Robin for a very brief time and then wasn't Robin anymore, and it's like usually just forgotten, is looked over. Maybe a story taking place in that interim. And also, speaking of Robins, my favorite Robin as Robin, which is Tim. I mean, Dick is my favorite of all the characters that have been Robin. Like, Dick is my favorite, but I prefer Dick as Nightwing. As Robin, my favorite Robin is Tim. So maybe writing a Tim story would be cool too. So many possibilities. That's one of the reasons why writing DC Comics fanfic is so much fun for me, because I love, especially the Batman family. I love so many of those characters, and I know them so well, and there's so many different directions you can go with them. Yeah. Ooh, Don McCauley, dead, but Tom is crazy and hallucinating. That could be interesting. Secular Scholar says, so you wonder if we will ever get to see the two girls growing up from the Children of Mars short in Picard. I mean, I wouldn't hold my breath, but I guess it's possible, sure. Sarah Schildneck says, if Kira had a religious career, I hope not, she wouldn't be a Vedic. She'd be the effing Kai. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Here's one from Seth Jones that I missed. What genre of Star Trek show hasn't been told but should? Star Trek police drama, like a Star Trek cop show, like Starfleet, like an elite unit of Starfleet investigators who travel the galaxy, like, solving crimes in the 24th century or whatever era you choose to set it in. That would be cool. Star Trek cop show. You can mix. There's all kinds of genres that you can mix with Star Trek. Star Trek medical show. That would be cool, right? They've tried a couple times to do like something with Starfleet Academy, so you could do like the Star Trek high school soap, right? Like there's all kinds of stuff they could do if they really wanted to have fun with it. That I would really get a kick out of. Vlog MN says, what's your opinion on them bringing in Neil Blomkamp to direct an episode of Picard? I think it's a great idea. Dana, Star Trek as copropaganda? Well, I would hope that they wouldn't. Not necessarily. I would hope that they would write it in. Actually, oh my God, that's a great idea. Do a Star Trek show. Do a Star Trek show as a cop show, but because it's Star Trek, you use it to comment on the problem of racial injustice and inequality and police brutality in law enforcement. That's what the show would be. It would be a Star Trek cop show that would critique policing, specifically American policing. What a great idea. Now I really want somebody to do that show. The Star Trek cop show that is a critique of modern policing. That's what a great idea. Some random geek, what about Star Trek horror? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Caroline Clark, Star Trek janitorial staff. Why the hell not? Here's a super chat from Joe Freeman Williams who says, hey, Steve, don't get to watch live much, so I figured I'd commemorate with a tip. Love your stuff, especially Facepalm 5, Trek Actually. Thanks for everything. Well, thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate you saying that. That means a lot. Super chat from Kaylee Hardy who says, Star Trek temporal investigations. Yes. Or how about this? And I mentioned this in a video a while back. How about Time Trek? Right? Not necessarily temporal investigations, but just a show set on a time traveling ship. And I know they've done that before, not in Star Trek they haven't, but the Legends, on the CW, Legends of Tomorrow, which is basically that. It's just adventures on a time ship, right? And it's great. But yeah, something like that would be good for Star Trek too. Absolutely. Super chat from John Burns who says, like the Will Ferrell character in the movie Stranger Than Fiction, where he starts hearing the author who's writing his story in his mind, and then he's told, you must die. It's a perfect ending. Okay, sure. Sarah Schildneck says, I'd love to see a Star Trek political show, not exactly like West Wing, but about the democracy, the diversity of an alliance of thousands of planets, and an alien female president. I think that has potential. That's a good idea, too. Michelle Robideau says, good luck finding a network to air that Star Trek cop show. Star Trek is only for CBS All Access now. And, Netflix and Amazon Prime internationally, but, they're loading up that CBS All Access streaming service with original content. So if they make a Star Trek cop show, I guarantee you it's going there first. Kaylee, yes, another super chat. Thank you very much. Star Trek Relativity. Good idea. Yeah. Bring back Gary Seven, says the Kitsune Cavalier. Yeah, I okay. I mean, I would give it a chance. Gary Seven is not like my one of my favorites. I mean, it's a fine episode, but that little corner of Star Trek lore doesn't really interest me all that much. Vlogman says, I want to see more of the Enterprise J. I want to see more of a backstory with it. Oh, that could be interesting. Yeah, Secular Scott. Yeah, Doctor Who is another reference. Yeah, obviously. Caroline Clark, Star Trek the Musical. They've got the two guys from Rent. That's true. That's true. Take advantage of the talents of the cast. For sure. Pedro Noguera, Star Trek courtroom shenanigans. I mean, they like, it seems like half the episodes of all the shows are courtroom episodes anyway, sometimes, doesn't it? That's one of my favorite jokes that I made in a Trek Actually video. It was one of the earlier ones where I made the joke that, the show is about a group of explorers traveling through the galaxy, meeting aliens, flying faster than the speed of light, having these unthinkably awesome adventures in the depths of space. And what's the most incredible adventure you can possibly have when flying through outer space and meeting strange new aliens, but to have an arbitration hearing on your ship? And they do that so often. And like every star, I don't think Discovery has had one yet. And I don't think Picard had one in the first season, but every other Star Trek series has had a courtroom episode where there's some kind of conflict between people on the ship or between someone on the ship and some member of an alien society that they just visited. And the captain is like, we're going to have a hearing. And that's the episode. And it's like, God, I know the shows have budgets. Like, I know it's a great way to do, like, not necessarily a bottle episode, but it's a good way to do a relatively low budget episode where you only need you don't need a lot of special effects and you don't need to do anything too far fetched. But it's like, God, there are a lot of arbitration hearings in the future in space, aren't there? Some random gig, Star Trek reality TV over my dead body. Over my dead body. I will drive to Hollywood and stop that show from happening. Or more likely, Vancouver. That's probably where they would shoot it. Or Toronto. They shoot Star Trek in Toronto too now. Anyway, yeah, I would. That's the only one that hasn't intrigued me so far. Star Trek reality TV. I don't think so. I don't think I would like that. Oh, that's true. John Ginger says Disco didn't have a courtroom episode, but Burnham did get court-martialed. It's kind of. And I believe let me think. The Menagerie was kind of a courtroom episode. I was trying to think what the first one would be. And the original series, there was the Menagerie, which was with the frame story that they used to fit the scenes from the cage in. That was a courtroom story. And then also there was Court Martial, which was Captain Kirk being court martial. That was a courtroom show too, but that was after the Menagerie. So I think the Menagerie might have been the first one. Zerax's super chat, thank you very much, says Star Trek Law and Order starring Judge Harry Kim. Ooh, I like that. He can finally take his revenge. I mean, be an impartial jurist. And another super chat from John Burns, Star Trek Elevator Operators Unit. Oh, Neil Blumengarten, Star Trek Lavoie, referring to Captain Philippa Lavoie, the JAG officer who was the judge in Measure of a Man. Nice pull. I like that. F. Ortel says, hey, a Star Trek sitcom on a ship inside the Federation border doing mundane stuff. That has to be done too. Sure. You could do like the Star Trek version of like The Office. You could do like a mockumentary, for sure. Jemshin, Trailer Park Boys of the 23rd century, for sure. Absolutely. Choose Red Mage, Quantum Leap Trek. I would be happy with just a crossover, Super chat from Jared Trich says, Star Trek Distant. Drop them in Andromeda or something where there is literally no way home, so they don't even try. True exploration forever. Could be something. Absolutely. Caroline Clark is just busting my chops tonight. Star Trek Trump. Oh, God, why? They could do a show about how douchey the 45th president was and how Starfleet overcame the U.S. Space Force. Oh, yes. Keely Hardy, a Pac-Led sitcom, for sure. for sure. If Jason doesn't get a part in that, then there's something wrong. Because that that should be the Plarb show. That should be the Plarb show. Pedro Noguera, Star Trek Spaceborne, mainly about those huge space-dwelling creatures. I always loved this idea. Yeah, like in Galaxy's Child, right? With the one that thinks the Enterprise is its mother. Yeah, that's a really good episode and a really good concept. I don't know how you could do a show just about them, but maybe have them be like an important feature in the show for sure. Yeah, Michelle Robideau, Quantum Leap crossover with Captain Archer. I mean, how like it writes itself, doesn't it? Okay, so we're not quite at an hour and a half, but we're getting close, and I think I'm gonna wrap up the show now. So everybody who has been watching, who watched from the beginning, who has been watching the after show and stuck around, the Jim Brown Pack-led Trek equals Trump Trek. I like that. Yeah, sour the milk, exactly, capital H. That's the episode. So anyway, I just want to say thanks to all of you for watching and for hanging out in the chat with me for a while after the official part of the show was over. I can't thank you enough for watching and for your support in whatever form it takes. Just a reminder, if you want to support me and support this channel, patreon.com/Steve Shives. Also, don't forget that in addition to the YouTube stuff, I co-host a couple of podcasts with the great, brilliant, indispensable, irreplaceable, hilarious Jason Harding. They're at letmelistenpodcasts.com. You can listen to our movie review podcast, which is Late Seating, and our most recent review there is of the movie Serpico, which is a very timely movie. It's about police corruption and a police department that is completely rotten from top to bottom. And the one cop who is like, why is it like this? Great movie, great performance by Al Pacino. You can listen to our review of that. You can also listen to us on the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast, where we play low-ranking officers serving aboard the classic Trek Enterprise. It's our labor of love. And we have a great time doing the Ensign's Log, and we hope that you have a great time listening to it, those of you who do listen to it. And if you haven't listened to it, check it out. LetMeListenPodcast.com, and also links in the description. Also, don't forget to say a note of thank you and acknowledgement to the great, indispensable Kevin MacLeod, the internet's favorite composer who composes royalty-free music, including proto-funk, which is what I use for the theme music of this series. Also, don't forget the charity links in the description of the video to help out some of our friends who need a helping hand. The charity links that have been compiled into a Google Doc by our friend Some Random Geek. Please check those out. And donate to help out some of our friends who need a helping hand. If you can, I would really appreciate that, and I know they would as well. John Burns with one last super chat. OMG, Star Trek Game of Thrones. Boy, that's the second one that just doesn't seem interesting to me at all. but thank you, John, for throwing it out there. I appreciate it. So yeah, and Pedro, thank you, saying I'm the best. Well, you're the best. Thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for coming. And I will see you Friday for a new episode of Ask Away. So until then, have a good week. Please take care, everybody, and I'll see you later.